The Boeing 757-100 was a proposed variant of the popular single-aisle program announced actually at the series' launch. The variant was conceived really to address a fundamental area of the market that Boeing believed there'd be to be a gap in, and felt that airlines could have greater flexibility if they brought on this particular aircraft type. However, the 757-100 was never developed, and Boeing's decision to eventually abandon the project also came relatively quickly. Why was an aircraft that seemingly had enough backing to be launched never actually released? Was it a missed opportunity? And just what did the variant entail? When Boeing introduced the 757 in the early 1980s, the aircraft was applauded as one that continued to take the necessary steps to allow airlines to operate efficiently, with great range and flexibility. The 757-200 and later the 757-300 certainly became staples for airlines operating medium-haul and even transcontinental routes. To this day, they are still utilised across key markets, really showcasing the series' longevity. However, Boeing identified a potential market for smaller, lower-capacity aircraft, which led to internal discussions of a prospective shorter unit known as the 757-100. The proposed Dash 100 was envisaged as a scaled-down version of the Dash 200, which was also announced at the time. It would offer reduced passenger capacity but still retain those performance advantages that would hopefully play a role in airlines going on to purchase the plane. Boeing envisaged the aircraft being able to seat around 120 to 150 passengers in a typical configuration. Furthermore, the jet would be designed precisely to cater to routes with more moderate demand, where say maybe a larger plane would be deemed unsuitable. And if you're noticing some similarities between the purpose of a 757-100 and maybe another present Boeing aircraft, you wouldn't necessarily be wrong, and that's something I'll dive into a little bit later. So really, to generalize, the American plane maker saw the 757-100 as a perfect disruptor and a means to improve the program's performance with more uses than one. Furthermore, Boeing had outlined its plans to replace the 727, which was an aging unit, with a plane that'd have massive overall improvements. The 757-100 was even announced at the broader launch of the 757 program in 1978. However, there were immediate concerns. Despite the 757-100 appeal, several challenges impacted the plane maker's ability to actually offer this aircraft on a firm basis to customers. Another factor was the 757-100's struggles with that all-important shortened fuselage, which really was the selling point for the variant, ultimately compared to the scale of the other 757-200. Designing and producing a shortened variant of an aircraft is absolutely not straightforward, and while it may not be a clean sheet, it will always have its associated difficulties. This could range from structural modifications to weight reductions and also adjustments with the system, all this needing to be required at the time. All these relevant changes would also require the plane maker to make some pretty hefty investments, and given the relatively small aircraft that was beginning to emerge for such a plane, it was pretty difficult to justify these costs, especially with the 737 program already meeting much of the demand. So you'll recall a little bit earlier, I examined the 757-100 and made mention that there may have been something else that would have been suitable, and that relates back again to the 737. This an aircraft that was a critical consideration because of the prospective overlapping in the portfolio. At the time, Boeing was also producing the 737 family, which offered aircraft in a similar size and capacity ranges. Therefore, if Boeing had introduced the 757, it would risk cannibalizing 737 sales and really creating unnecessary internal competition that would negatively impact the broader business. However, it does remain important to consider why Boeing considered a 757-100 in the first place, even if it would continue not to be launched and ultimately have negatives. By the late 1970s, the industry was transitioning, as we know already, to more fuel-efficient and advanced advanced designs. This was definitely aided by the rapid development of key technologies to facilitate this. Each new plane would therefore aim to fundamentally address what airlines maybe had concerns with regards to their predecessor of aircraft, and with rising fuel costs and emerging competition, well, there was a greater need for manufacturers to truly offer something that would be groundbreaking and survive for the long term. Airlines sought aircraft that could also give them the operational flexibility that they desired to grow their network, while reducing the costs. The 757 was intended to fill the niche of cost reduction on thinner routes, as per Boeing, offering an option for airlines operating shorter routes without, say, sacrificing the broader 757 program. Such enhancements can be seen right across our industry, but have been typically seen more so in the opposite direction. Instead of, say, a shorter variant, the fuselage has more often than not been extended to allow for increased passengers, and even at times the addition of an extra fuel tank, which would then bump up your overall range. Ultimately, Boeing's decision to not pursue the 757-100 came pretty quickly, with the plane maker discontinuing the variant in 1979, ending any hope of it coming to market. Instead, Boeing wanted to focus on expanding its existing program and finding ways to ensure that the 757 would become a mainstay within the industry. The Dash 200 became the program's lifeline, being a really popular variant with airlines and securing strong sales in the upcoming decades. Eventually, Boeing would look to offer an upgrade in the form of a stretch rather than a shortened variant, and this was known as the 757-300. Such a move also followed the 757's production peaking at around 100 aircraft by the early 1990s. Boeing's decision not to move forward with the 757-100 could be viewed in, you'd argue, two different manners, with two very different outcomes and stances. By not proceeding with this aircraft, Boeing was able to optimize the broader 757 series to enjoy the success it would go on to have, also making sure that there was an important gap between the popular narrowbody and its staple, the 737. However, the other lens may have seen some argue that the 757-100's absence from the portfolio of commercial aircraft offered maybe left a gap in what was present, and a gap that Boeing was obviously trying to target at some point. That lens would have analysts, though, come back and discuss fundamental areas such as the overall presence across the commercial airplanes division of the 737, and how a 757-100 may have very much negated the all-important single aisle, which remains today as their arguably most important aircraft when I relate that to your output levels. Boeing's end decision does, with hindsight, seem to have been the right one. The 757 remains an iconic plane, known affectionately as the flying pencil. A testament to the jet is that some airlines that fly it certainly feel that there is no perfect replacement. Moreover, the 737 series type has continued to advance and has really stuck in its own lane and not have Boeing release an aircraft that could potentially impact its overall sales. The 757-100 certainly remains a what if. Ultimately, the premise seemingly had enough internal backing to move forward with it. It just wasn't launched. However, Boeing realized the complexities of proceeding with it and determined it would not be wise. The plane's stay in the industry was short, barely lasting a year from its announcement until plans were scrapped, but I'd love to hear your take. Was the 757-100 an aircraft you would have liked to have seen, but more so, do you believe it would have made sense, or were Boeing right to have not proceeded with it? Let me know down below in the comments. Thanks a bunch for your support, take care, be safe, and I'll see you in a couple of days for your latest industry analysis right back here on GlobeTrotting. And we'll fly.